brethren, my heart's desire and prayer to God for Israel is that they might be saved. For there is no difference between the Jew and the Gentile. For the same Lord over all is rich unto all that call upon him. Zola Levitt presents Considering the Times and Seasons of Our World Today. Here's Zola Levitt.
Shalom. Hello again. Joan Peters is back with us. I read her whole biography last week. Suffice it to say, well, for one thing, she's the author of From Time Immemorial, The Origins of the Arab-Jewish Conflict over Palestine, a basic book, what you call a source. That is, it's not an editorial by a report or something like that. She's a historian. She went to the Middle East. She went country to country. She researched it. She wrote this, how many pages did you write here? Almost 600 pages of data on what's really going on over there. She's currently an advisor, trustee, and executive committee member of the National Committee on American Foreign Policy based in New York. You can get the book at Amazon.com, for one. It's at Barnes & Noble and et cetera, but get this book and take a look at it. It's a long read. As I said last week, don't start it when you go to bed. It's really a page-turner. It's really a riveting book. Scripture pertains in some ways to what's going on today. In Psalm 83, there is a single verse that says in Psalm 83:4, "They have said, 'Come and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance.'" That's your area, isn't it, Joan?
Wow. That's absolutely on target.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
That's a little scary.
It's scary, yeah. It says, "For lo, thine enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up thy head. They have taken crafty counsel against thy people and consulted against thy hidden ones." That's just what's going on.
It's exactly.
Yeah.
How can that be?
Yeah. The psalmist lived 3,000 years ago, but he saw the truth. Look, we're at a time when Israel is in trouble all around the world, and it's part of your daily work, isn't it? Zionism's been called racism. What do you make of that, by the way? Zionism is racism.
It's about the Jewish state.
Yeah.
There's one set of rules for the Jewish state and another set of rules for all other states. There can't be a national liberation movement if it's Jewish. There can be a Palestinian Arab liberation movement, even if it's not real, even if it was invented. But there can't be, the campuses don't allow a thing taught like, in the main, there are no such courses. The national liberation of the Jewish people, the national liberation of Israel.
Yeah, why isn't there
the modern state of Israel? Why isn't there a course of that?
How about they would find that Israel's one of the world's most progressive countries and doing very, very well. Why isn't there an ILO to match the PLO? Israel Liberation Organization.
But there has Israel is the ILO. Israel was there long before the PLO.
Oh, that's true.
And the PLO is simply, not so simply, but, well, maybe it is simple. It was implanted there in order to destroy Israel.
I was going to ask you about this illegal immigration. Is that what's meant by the Arabs coming across borders and settling and so forth?
Good question. Illegal immigration by the British was meant Jews. Uh-huh. As far as the British were concerned, there were no illegal Arab immigrants. There were only Jewish illegal immigrants who were a nuisance to the British because they were trying to come from Hitler's Germany, where they were being slaughtered, and the British wouldn't allow them in the mandatory period because they would be an affront to the British and to the Arabs.
Yeah, this was in the 1940s.
30s, 20s, 30s.
Even back to then. Every time the Jews came, the British would shut them out.
Well, miserable little Jewish refugee ships were being shot at who were approaching Palestine's borders, and the coasts were clear. But they couldn't get in because the British High Commissioner, had promised certain Arab effendis and Arab inciting to violence, that if they let the Jews in, there would be more violence. There was no nationalism at that time. There was none. There was only what is an age-old hatred of the non-Muslim, the infidel, and that could be incited readily. Mm-hmm. All it needed was a mufti. The grand mufti of the area was, in
Islamic
fact,
leader.
Yeah, he was. But he was, in fact, inciting hate blindly. It had nothing to do with either politics or Israel.
And we're seeing it really come to fruition. Finally, the British gave up. The Jews did come in. They reestablished their country. And
well, they didn't give up for quite a long while. In the meantime, there were thousands upon thousands of Jews who were not allowed into their own homeland, which had been mandated to them in the I would say 1920 was the correct date. That was when the mandatory period began. There was an international mandate for a Jewish national home. That meant Israel. And that was supposed to begin in 1920. The Balfour Declaration merely underscored that. Mm-hmm. But the Balfour Declaration was incorporated into the mandate, giving the Jews international a force of power as a state. What happened was that the British honored this mandate in the breach. Mm-hmm. They called Arabs natives. They called Jews interlopers. They called them intruders. They called them aliens. In fact, they were importing secretly thousands upon thousands of Arabs to Israel, to Palestine, from areas all over the Arab world, and saying that the places were not there for Jews. They said that the absorptive capacity for Jews had been reached in the country, that they had been granted, so that it was so perverted and so distorted going in that by the time 1948 came, it was a continuation of perversion, of immorality. It wasn't the beginning. The Jews must come out and fight for their people and for their country. They fight for everything. The Igbos, the Koreans, the blacks, the Chinese. They fight for everything. They are they're in touch with human rights everywhere, but they are blinded in their own land.
That is a phenomenon I've noticed. If Israel, say tourism, depended on American Jewish people to come, I think they'd go out of business.
That's right.
It's sad. But the church people are coming, the so-called Christian Zionists. People that watch our program certainly come to Israel readily, even in the worst of times. And I'm rather proud of them.
And I'm sure they are very, very grateful for that.
Yeah.
I'm sure that they are.
Look, campus is a place where it starts. I myself am in the middle. I'm embroiled with a campus that subverted a speaking engagement of mine, so that when I finally stood before the audience, there were only 2 students from the university that came, even though we sent plenty of publicity and we're ready to send plenty more. People from a local church poured in, but as for students, I asked for a show of hands. There were 2, and then I learned they needed the assembly credits. They suffered through the thing and got stamped on the way out and they'll never come back. But you've been speaking on campuses more than I have.
Well, I was, but lately they have been canceling me. They have canceled everything that is Zionist or pro-Zionist or pro-Israeli. And, well, you saw what happened in Canada with Benjamin Netanyahu. I was in that same city a week earlier, and I got to speak at a school, but it was only a matter of pure luck. If Netanyahu had happened first, it wouldn't have happened.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm getting calls from everywhere in the world to come and speak. You wouldn't believe where. One thing that I didn't get to tell you is that my book is coming out in Norwegian, if you can believe that.
My goodness, yeah.
In the beginning of November.
I had a book come out in Norwegian. Couldn't read a word of it. I guess it was my book.
I can't. In fact, I had somebody check it, the whole translation.
Make sure it's all
I
there.
did.
Yeah.
I had a wonderful person I found in Israel to do that. She was a Norwegian Jew who lived in Israel. Mm-hmm. And she's very good. Her name is Jackie Feinberg, just in case you want to give a little hello
blow.
And thank you. But I must say that I've had calls from Dublin. I've had calls from Ames, Iowa. I've had calls from Fresno, California.
They want to hear your point of view.
From Sydney, Australia.
Yeah.
They need, it isn't a matter of wanting. They sound so desperate. They are so upset. They say there's no balance. There are film after film against Jews, against Israel, but they have no, what they say is, we need to hear the other side.
Sure.
And I say, what's the other side? They say the side about Israel and Jews and their rights. I said, what side are you hearing now? Well, we're hearing about all the rights of the Arabs. And you know, Zola, it is so obscene to me to hear that campuses have been stolen by the lies of the Arab world and the hatred, that our very campuses, the bastions of intellectual freedom and curiosity, are being taken over by something so fascistic as this. I really balk at it, and I don't know what we can do, but we have to do something, because both of us have been very badly beaten by this.
Yes.
And it's hate. It's pure, unadulterated hate. It has to be tempered, and we can't allow a Hitlerian kind of fascism to take over the campuses, because to give equal time to the lies of Arabs about Palestine and to the Jewish history of their land and how they got it and how they're keeping it in spite of all of the terror, that is tantamount to giving Hitler equal time with the Jews who were walked to their deaths in the ovens.
You know, I devoted my past summer to driving through the Midwest with a trailer with my wife and attempting to go from campus to campus. We publicized this. We contacted people in college towns. They went to the colleges. We mailed videotape of what I was going to say ahead, no surprises. We got almost no takers. I could commend the Pittsburgh State University in Kansas that had me, or Governor's State in Chicago. Usually it was the work of one good guy on campus who made it happen, but frankly, I almost wasted the time. And I did it without fee, without travel expense, simply saying, would you like to hear the other side of the story? Nobody. Forget about this diversity. Forget about this all voices welcome. There's no such thing on our campuses. They are Muslim institutions.
Yeah, they are. And it's very sad.
It's terribly sad. Look, we have to go to a break just momentarily, but yeah, I hate to give that report, and I did so in the Levitt letter, but it was an utter failure in the sense of talking to student bodies, because nobody came but church people. The universities did the best they could to suppress the speeches, and Joan has had plenty of experiences. We're going to go to a break right now. She's Joan Peters. She's source material. She wrote from Time Immemorial. You want the truth? Get it here. Back with her right after this.
For a biblical perspective on what is happening in Israel and the Middle East, ask for Zola's free monthly newsletter, The Levitt Letter. Call toll-free 1-800-WONDERS. Zola's New Kingdom catalog describes his books, teaching tapes, and correspondence course. For Zola's free newsletter and catalog, please call 1-800-WONDERS. Explore the Bible. Experience Jerusalem. Find new life in the Jordan. Set sail in Galilee. Make your trip to Israel with Zola Levitt. For tour information, call 1-800-WONDERS. That's 1-800-966-3377.
To be here is a double blessing for all that's going on in the world. It's a place of unspoken peace.
It's been a beautiful, wonderful trip. I wouldn't take it for anything in the world, and I believe it's a true blessing from God that I'm here.
It's making the scriptures come alive for us, and we keep thinking it can't get better than this, but it does. It just keeps getting better and better.
It's a chance of a lifetime, and it gives you so much more of what you read in the Bible, and you think you understand what the Bible says, but until you come here and actually visualize the things like the empty tomb and the olive trees, then it makes the whole scriptures come to life.
My second trip, and it's even better than the first time. Yeah, I know some have come several times, like Zola many, many times, and every time it just gets better. Yeah. So maybe I'll come again. But we know we'll all be here when the Lord comes back. We'll meet here.
Well, those are our tours of Israel going on all the time as usual, and no problems. What can I tell you? 30 years, 77 tours, not a stub finger. Take a chance, folks. Take a break from your dangerous place where you live. Can I say that? Yes. Any place in America is more dangerous than any like-populated place in Israel, even with the terrorism. But, I don't know, Joan, people are coming back all the time. We're hearing so much propaganda about the place. You were reading last week from your from Time Immemorial. Give me another selection out of this turnspeak you were calling.
Yes, right.
How they distort.
Yes. Well, what we're hearing, what I really want to do is just read one sentence. It sounds very factual and simple and correct, and then take it apart and show how many elements of it are false and deceitful and lies.
Okay. Yeah.
I'll do this one. Only Jews immigrated into Palestine, while Arabs were natives there for millennia. It's just the opposite.
It is. Yeah.
It's just the opposite. The Arabs had, in my book, I trace the Arab communities that came following in upon the Jewish settlers who first came to resettle Israel in the end of the 19th century. They had what they called ketuvim. The Jews wrote their sort of letters to their people at home, and they called them ketuvim, and they would describe how 10 Arabs would come, and then a whole tribe would end up coming and planting themselves at the foot of a settlement that had just developed, and beginning to try to get the benefits that were accruing to the Jews who had moved in there. And it was a rough territory, so they couldn't stay there very long. They moved on, and another group came. And the Ottoman ruler of the time were charging them usurious interest rates in order to stay on the land for a season. And they would charge up to 120% interest for a loan that they gave to keep them there in order to pay the tolls. They had to pay head tax to the Turkish. The Turkish head tax was collected by the Arab effendis who were absentee. The owners of this land were not in the land where the Jews and the Arabs were. They were in Lebanon. They were in Syria. They were simply cashing in on this flow of people. But there was a constant exchange of people. And the Turks were bringing in people from other countries within the Turkish Empire. For example, Bosnia. There are many Bosnians who are considered now Palestinians.
Oh, I heard of this. Yeah, somebody in Israel told me, my gosh, we have Pakistanis here, we have Iranians here, we have everybody in the Middle East just walks over the borders, and then they call themselves Palestinians.
I have a list here. But did you know? Can't find it. It's a list of all the nationalities that called themselves native in Jerusalem.
Well, how many approximately?
Oh, maybe 50.
50 different nationalities.
50, yes. But I mean, all over the world. The interesting thing is that there's so many layers of deceit. They start in so many different places. You can't go from one to another without talking about the deceit. You have to cut through. You have to break this incredible mythology that has created the anti-Semitism against Israel. You must. It's very important to do it.
Yes. Oh, my gosh, it's important, yeah. Well, today, of course, the problem of the moment is these homicide bombings against the Jews that the so-called Palestinians keep perpetrating. And as we sit today, there's much talk about building this fence or trying to fence the Jewish settlements away from the Palestinian homicide bombers. And just recently, the UN declared, well, that's just a terrible thing, and they can't do it, and so forth. Can they seriously say to people, do not protect yourself against murderers? I mean, that's what they're saying.
They might seriously say it, but I hope that the Israelis won't accept it. Would the Americans accept it? Gosh, I ask you, wow. Would we build a fence to keep out homicide bombers, or would we get rid of them? Would we keep them out at any cost? What would we do? I can't imagine us building makeshift fences to protect our children because we couldn't protect them any other way. But that's what the Jews are up against.
Why can't the Jews do what we do, which is to go in the areas and arrest the people? I mean, they do.
Yeah, it's not just Jews. I said Jews, but, excuse me for interrupting, but, it's Jews and Christians and others who are not Muslim. Yeah. That's what we're talking about here. Oh, yeah. It's not simply Jews who live in the Jewish state. There are many others who live also.
No, immigrants to Israel of all sorts, visitors and so forth, are all exposed to these homicide bombs.
Yes.
What is the complaint about the fence? What's wrong with it? I mean, you hate to do it, but given that, is there something terribly wrong about fencing off murderers?
Well, of course not. But the murderers don't want to be fenced off, do they?
No, I don't think so.
And since they have the final say in world opinion, in the court of world opinion, everything seems to go. I just wonder, you were talking about this, the pendulum.
Yeah.
And I was just wondering how many hundreds of thousands more innocent people in Israel are going to have to be slaughtered before the pendulum swings the other way. Is it going to be a Holocaust?
Yeah, we were discussing that. Yeah, whether the pendulum has swung too far. I mean, here the Prime Minister of Malaysia criticized Jewish people because they're Jews, rather like Hitler. People everywhere, campuses, newspapers, the New York Times notably.
Militants instead of terrorists.
Yeah, this kind of talk.
Giving them respectability for murdering.
Yeah. Maybe the pendulum will go too far up one side, start back the other way, and people start saying, no, wait a minute, that's unreasonable. The Jews haven't done anything really to anybody, and so forth. And that's the question, when, and then Bible prophecy, if this is the time of the end, says it's not going to stop, it's going to lead all the way to Armageddon, where the whole world's going to attack Israel. And they're going to lose, by the way, according to prophecy. But that's the end of all this. This is the famous Armageddon. Do you think this is building to a final cataclysm like that, or is it going to swing back? You have the wisdom to.
I don't have prophecy. I pray with all my heart that isn't what happens. I pray that there's a pendulum that swings back.
Yeah.
It's already too late to have swung back with humaneness, because if people were humane, they couldn't have let this go on as long as it has. I think there's something about... You want me to tell you what I think?
Sure.
I think that it's a kind of vengeance against the Jews for having been victimized in the Holocaust. I think the Jews have now been put into a position where people can say, you see, you're not such good guys after all. You did something bad to the Arabs. They have manufactured this whole case against the Jews, knowing that people have been looking for some way, something to give them an excuse for what they let happen.
To justify the whole...
In the Second World War.
It's very interesting. Guilt causes you to say, well, you deserved it.
I believe so. I can't think of any other reason that even approaches sanity. If it's insane and you simply say again, like Hitler did in the Second World War, Jews are vermin, therefore, they look like rats, we have to kill them and get rid of them, then that's insane and you can't go anywhere else but to what you spoke of. But if there's any sanity at all, maybe, although it's much too late to think of it as humane, maybe there can be an attempt to backtrack, to look at the evil that has been done, if no other reason than 9/11, the debacle.
Very good point. We ourselves have been attacked. Why?
How can we not identify with the Israelis in a time like this? How can they allow the world to blame the Jews for 9/11? explain that to me, because you are the man of the cloth. I am not. I want to know how that could be perpetrated. Do you know that most of the world believes that this was done by the Mossad and that Jews were sent home from the World Trade Center?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, most of these stories have circulated, despite the
How crazy is that?
The list of casualties in the New York Times with hundreds of Jewish names. As a man of the cloth, I'll just say this. I hold Israel totally blameless, totally innocent. I don't see, not as a Jew and not as a guy who goes there a lot, etc., but just as a normal thinking human being, I do not see that they have done anything at all wrong. They are as tender and careful with their people as they can be. When they go and get a murderer, just like we do, they criticize, but they use the smallest missile, soldiers on their feet, taking casualties, trying to spare civilians. You get up to here with it, and you almost say, let's get this intifada so-called over with. It will take 5 minutes. And the Israelis aren't like that. They're immoral. They're decent. Their law precludes.
They get absolutely no recognition for that.
No,
they're
absolutely
simply
none.
Twisted into a devil image. Nothing they do, no humane act that they've compiled in this. I have I can't tell you how many pages I have loaded with things that the Israelis have done which are unknown to man because they're so humane.
Yeah, I have to stop you and I want to save time to tell people to read this. It's over. Isn't that a wonderful conversation? From Time Immemorial is her book, The Origins of the Arab-Jewish Conflict Over Palestine. It's available from Amazon.com and in the big bookstores. Get it, read it, get on the team here. Golly, get with God, get with the Zionists, and Sha'alu Shalom Yerushalayim. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem.
Our offer on this program is the expanded TV airing schedule with a full-page declaration for each of our networks. This handy guide provides the airing day and time by zone for PAX, ABC Family, TVN, Dish, and DirecTV. Or you can see it at Zola's website, www.levitt.com, by clicking on US TV Schedule. And for a concise biblical perspective of our times, ask for the Levitt Letter, a free monthly update on recent events in Israel and the Middle East. Call 1-800-WONDERS. That's 1-800-WONDERS. Or write to Zola, Box 12268, Dallas, Texas 75225. On the internet, visit Zola's website at www.levitt.com. Zola Levitt Ministries depends on tax-deductible donations from viewers like you. Please see Zola on Internet TV at www.levitt.com.